Welcome to Generation Flex, where we bring generationally diverse perspectives to burning challenges. When a car pulls up next to you playing loud music and every other word in the song is cussing or cursing, what do? Do you get offended and roll up your windows, or do you start grooving along with them? And the way people communicate has certainly changed down through the years. Today, some women freely call each other the B word and somehow consider themselves friends. F-bombs litter everything, not to mention the ever-present N-word and countless other seemingly rude and choice words that might make you go, who are you talking to? And every generation takes its turn at pushing the envelope. But in every other word, in every other sentence, in all mediums, is it just way too much? My guests today are ready for some real talk about decorum in communication, or the lack thereof. From the Generation Boomers, we got Andrea Zopp, managing partner at Cleveland Avenue. From Generation X, we've got Stephen Shaw, community engagement director at Verizon. Generation Millennial, we got Shannon Claiborne, individual giving and events manager at Chicago Youth Centers. And Generation Z, Julie Gurdal, CAN-TV nonprofit services coordinator. I confess that as a self-described curious boomer, I might be a little sensitive. I don't know. But this is something that I think we should bring out into the open. So by definition, decorum means to have controlled, calm, polite behavior. When you think about the way that we communicate and you think about what we're hearing, just as a matter of sometimes walking down the street, having conversations with people, and we start to hear more of these, four-letter words, the explicatives, the profanity. Does it strike you as it strikes me like, wow?
I think a lot of it depends on, I'm very big on when, where, context. When, where, who, what are you talking to? I think sometimes if I'm walking down the street, you're passing a group of people, I don't even really hear it. But if I'm in the grocery store and there's a mom talking to her 3-year-old using swear words, I hear that and it makes me uncomfortable. Or if I'm in a setting with people who I know are uncomfortable with swear words or speech, certain kinds of speech, and people are just using it. Again, I'm very conscious of it, but it depends. I was a prosecutor for a long time, and have a lot. My husband's in law enforcement. I'm very comfortable with swear words, but I do think because they've become so prevalent in the music and the culture on TV, we've lost that rule that there should be some ground rules on when and where and how.
There's a time and place is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay, how about you?
I agree with Andy because it's not like any of these words are new words, but there's decorum and then there's public decorum. And so there are just certain things that I am used to hearing in a public setting, and other things that probably wouldn't bother me in other settings. For instance,
yes.
if anyone's ever worked for an investment bank, especially on a trading floor, you hear, like Andy said, you hear all manner of everything, and you just keep rolling because it's like, not everybody, but a lot of people, it's just going flying back and forth, and then afterwards everyone says, all right, we did it, now let's, go for drinks or whatever. So it's almost like, it's just kind of the setting. But when you're in a grocery store or you're in a theater or somewhere else where you would think, there's just a certain way that I am accustomed to people carrying themselves in that public space that you hear it's kind of like, do I clutch my imaginary pearls? No, but it's kind of like it's more of a I just can't believe people are just just out now, saying whatever, whenever. So I think that's the change. It's not that people are using the words, it's just that where and, like you said, the frequency.
So it sounds like there's an inside kind of in the house language, and then there's out the house. It was almost like your inside clothes and your outside clothes. Like there just wasn't a time and place for things to be shared openly.
when you gave us the definition of decorum, I'm like, behavior that's calm and all these, adjectives, according to who, though? Like, I think that's
Webster.
but who wrote that?
Merriam.
Who wrote these things, right? Like, that are setting the standards. I appreciate, like, my elders not encouraging, that type of language, but I also think, I've worked in school settings, and so I worked with students who are in middle school, high school, and so they're have feelings, big feelings, kind of ignore some of the school rules around language just so that I can understand what's going on for you, and that's how you feel the most comfortable expressing yourself. Then let's go for that, and then we can process through it in language that they might be able to say to our principal or to their parents or to someone else. But I think it's important for people to have the opportunity to say what they're feeling, how they would say it, versus me trying to control what comes out, and it imposes more of like what I want you to feel.
And that's really interesting. So you will a child you can hear the child say it, right? And then you say, okay, so you're not in trouble for saying it.
Right.
Let's coach you on how to say it to the principal. That's really interesting. That's a growth moment. That's a coaching moment. That's awesome. Good. Because once upon a time, that got you sent straight to the principal's office. You said, what?
Right.
Again, who are you talking to? Principal's office.
Right.
Okay. How about you, Julie? What's your experience?
I feel like that curse words have been pretty normalized. Like, for me at least, like growing up, I've always heard them.
Like a lullaby, normal?
It's just that, I remember, like, from a young age, seeing my parents say those kind of words, seeing it on television. So for me, they don't hold as much power, but it honestly depends on the word, because there are some that I still find unacceptable. And if I'm interacting with someone who, like, for instance, uses like misogynistic or language that degrades women, I don't tolerate it, and I make that clear. So for the most part, yeah, I'm okay with hearing that kind of language, but it depends on the word.
And Julie, you're a high school student.
Yeah.
Right? I'm so proud of you for that. I thought that never would have been my thought in high school. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So is there anyone in your personal world today that you're like, ooh, this is just kind of off limits? Because when I get with my siblings, even today, as my daughter says, at my big age, I will not be cussing in front of them. It's just, for whatever reason, the light goes off. Now, if I'm by myself and in the car and, yes, guilty. But there are just some lines that just do not get crossed. Do you have any similar kinds of experiences in your space? Or you just like, I don't care who you are, I will be who I am, and you will hear what I have to say. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, there are just people that I'm around. Like, my family generally does not, if we're together, when we're having a time, there's just not a lot of cussing. There's just not. It just isn't, it's not, not because they don't or they haven't, it just doesn't really come up. I would never cuss in front of my 90-year-old mother-in-law. And I don't think I've ever sworn in front of her, even when she was much less than 90. But so I think, and there are people that I work with, and there are environments where I work where I have cussed a lot, and then there are environments where I'm working where I realize that people aren't comfortable, and I think you have to be sensitive to that. I think maybe that's one of the things that really raised it for me, because I grew up in a world where, from a professional world where like kind of everybody did, and you didn't even think about it, and then I moved into different settings. And all of a sudden you realize you're swearing, and then you look at somebody and they're kind of like, you're like, I don't think you like this.
Yes.
So I'm not going to do it around you anymore.
Yes.
Right? And it's about that sensitivity. I think that's the piece that's troubling to you. Like when you go to the gas station and somebody hops out and they're just cussing and swearing, or they're on their phone. That's my other favorite one, right? They're on the phone and they're just like oblivious to everybody else.
Yes,
Like
yes.
to me, that's the bigger issue. The idea that we've just decided, now have we normalized it, but we don't care really what anybody else thinks about it. Like, if you don't like it, too bad for you. And that's, is all about disrespecting other people and their space. And that, it's less about the words themselves than about really recognizing that for some people, they're just, it really makes them uncomfortable, and so why would you do it? And so that's the key.
True.
Yeah.
It's two words, Andy, that I think you said. I just want to bring those back. One is being oblivious.
Right.
Like I'm oblivious. You're oblivious to everybody else around you. And it's like how can you be? How can you be so self-centered in your own world that you forget that there's other people sharing this space with you? The other one was respect.
Yeah.
Right? Just respecting the fact that other people might be uncomfortable. I think it's something that we're getting away from. So again, maybe I'm just being too sensitive.
I'd be interested. I mean, Julie, do you have people like in your circle who just don't really like swearing and that you try not to swear around, or no? You're a nice
Honestly,
boy.
yeah, I
Everybody
haven't come
loves it.
across many people like that. But I still am conscious of when I use language like that, mostly because I feel like it leaves the impression that you're ignorant almost, and I don't want to give people that idea. So.
Ooh, can you say more about that? Like, so when you hear it, and you hear it, let's say, to an extreme of some sort, in your mind, it gives the feeling that's ignorant.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like I know a lot of people say that they like the words like that because it's another word to describe how they're feeling. But I feel like it actually is a way to get around saying how you're feeling instead of stating like why you're upset or what's really, bothering you. You're just taking a shortcut and saying something offensive to rile everybody else up so that way they feel the same way you're feeling.
Wow. Okay, that was
Super
Yeah.
deep. That was deep.
wow.
Look at you making us think.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
That was
very good.
and true. So very
Absolutely.
true.
People who use that language all the time, they use it because they don't have the vocabulary to otherwise express themselves. Now, that's not always true. I mean, obviously, people like Andy have a very extensive vocabulary.
Yeah.
They choose to use certain words,
Yeah.
for a reason. But I think that there is something to that. You just use what comes easy, and you're really not forced to find other ways to express yourself. I mean, for me, so again, I grew up in the South, and in the South, in the Bible Belt, there's just certain words you just did not say. I don't care where you are, how bad you're feeling. So like still around, it was so funny. There's a site.
So we're going to have to pick this up. We'll
Okay.
pick that back. So hold that thought. We'll pick that up because we know we got a lot of lessons from the South.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Chicagoland is filled with unique perspectives on culture and life. Each week on For the Culture, we'll delve into those perspectives with dynamic guests and engaging conversations from arts and entertainment to business to trending news to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'll get into it here on For the Culture. For the Culture airs Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on CanTV 19 and streaming on cantv.org.
Welcome back. So, Stephen, you were talking about Southern upbringing, which is a whole other conversation in and of itself, but please.
It is.
Go ahead.
And the South, the Bible Belt, and so there's just some things you just did not do or say. And it's funny because, like, when I'm talking to my mom now, there's a site a lot of people have heard of called Motley Fool, because we talk about stock. And I said something about, well, fool, da-da-da, and she was like, well, the Motley, even the word fool, she does not, because you learn, and from her parents and grandparents, there's certain words, you don't, if you can't say it in church, then you shouldn't say it, out anywhere else. And so even things like that is just like uncomfortable for her. So clearly, I wouldn't use language, if she don't like fool, then clearly, that kind of sets the bar for
It's like you couldn't say shut up. You
Couldn't
be
say
quiet.
shut up.
Shut up,
Fool.
exactly.
You couldn't even say huh.
There's just a whole different, what is considered, as you started, polite, public discourse of what you say and more importantly, when you say it. And so it's that time and place piece again.
Back in the day on the playground, some certain words came your way, and you're, again, who are you talking to like that? And you just end up like, okay, you know, you just knew they were just called fighting words.
Right.
People who consider themselves friends, and we've been, you know, we're buddies, and they're just calling each other, you know, the B word, and I have always found that so incredibly beyond disrespectful. Like, you cannot be my friend if you are calling me that word. Like, that got you an immediate push or shove or something.
But I think also, I mean, you have to think about how we grew up. I mean, and the context and the controls. And you think, go back to really what Julie said. It's normalized, right? It is, and it's in the music. It's on the TV. We didn't, you know, you said this. We didn't see it on TV. We didn't hear it on the radio. We didn't largely hear it at the house. We certainly didn't hear it at school. And so it was just a different environment. So when you grow up in an environment where it's more normalized, you're going to have a much higher comfort level with saying the words. And because I think we are now in this world where we really are much less empathetic about or caring about what's going on with the rest of the people. So
it's all about me, what I want to do.
It is, and not only that, if you do say something about it, or if you say, you know, hey, there's kids around here, or there's older people around here. If you try saying that to people, they will get in your face about it, right?
So,
why, right?
so.
Why are you? Who told you
That's
you
true.
could get into what I'm trying to say, right? And it is, you know, then you're having a fight about trying to get them to worry about what other people are
Who's
thinking.
in the
Right?
room? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, I think, so if you, because we talked about this earlier, it's like, well, where did this come from? Where did the shift come from? And I think it's communication itself used to be held in a certain regards. I remember, and I don't know if they even do this now, like, when you're in school, do you have to like stand up and recite poems and things like that? Do you all do that kind of, it's almost like growing up, again, I'm not that old, but growing up, especially again in the South, it's like you only had a certain opportunity to even communicate publicly. Obviously, you know, when you're with your friends and you're, you know, on the playground or whatever. But public communication, you know, there weren't a lot of opportunities for public expression. Certainly not as many. Well, now it's like communication is kind of cheap. It's cheapened now. It's not, you don't have that same premium on how you communicate. And so now it's like, well, I can say what I want. I mean,
Say what I want to say.
I can say what I want to say.
Clickbait,
Because
as they
now,
call it.
now I have various platforms. I can, you know, Snapchat. I can, you know, IG, Facebook, tweet. There's so many. I can just say whatever I want, whenever I want. Really, no repercussions. You know. So I think just the way that communication itself was kind of held at a certain regard, it's like it's just kind of what you do now. So if something is not seen as valuable, then you just kind of do whatever.
Now you need a little decoder ring.
Well,
in
that
social
too.
media, you know, if you know what LOL is, do you know what AF is? Like, it's still out there.
I mean, I think there's just, like we've talked about, like ground rules and the things that you choose in different settings with different groups of people. And I think like with your friend group, it's like having, like in high school or middle school, we had like our secret languages where we would like say things that nobody knew, right? It's like an inside joke. So I think that those things really impact the power, right, that our language has. And I think now certain words have different powers with different people, especially who it's coming from, right? It's like woman to woman saying the B word is a little different than like if a male would say that to a woman, right? And it's like I think we focus a lot on just like the general, like us as a whole group versus like really focusing on our smaller, you know, settings that we are using the language. Like you were saying, communicating at work, those are very different settings than like you're doing stuff on Snapchat or TikTok. But also considering our last few years, it's like we're constantly exposed to each other. So it's hard to be inside, outside, right? We have less of that like segmented pieces and
Lines of
compartmentalized,
word.
right.
Absolutely.
But something you also said about kind of having intra-group communication and people respecting, okay, that's what their group says. Now it's kind of like, well, and you know, you heard the big, every time someone says, oh, someone used the N-word, says, well, I use it all the time. Well, yeah, well, you can use it. You can't say it, but it's almost like certain things that people recognize, yeah, this is what I say in my group, or this is kind of what we say, but you can't say it outside of this particular group. And it's like there used to be some recognition of those boundaries. And now it's kind of like, well, now again, with the proliferation of ways to communicate and platforms, it's like, well, no, we're wide open. If I can say it, then you can say it, right? But so that's kind of like the attitude. It's like there are no more groups anymore. It's like everybody.
Those dividing lines are a little superficial because there's a time and place for everything. And what I hear you saying, Shannon, is it also depends on who's saying it, right? And I think maybe that's also something we have to think about as well. Like, but what if we just stop? What if we just paused it, and just had that inside outside, kind of situation? So just moving it to the future, right? Is there a way to sort of not put the genie back in the bottle, but how do we maybe help improve things? So, like the great George Benson said, I believe the children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. So there is an opportunity for us to teach children to be more respectful. As they're learning how to communicate, as they're growing, how can we teach them to be more respectful? Can I start with, not that you're a child, I don't want to say that. Tell us, Julie, what are your thoughts? How can we help turn things back to an element of politeness?
I would say, education. I think that my generation, as much as they use language that, older generations can find offensive, they are very concerned with, overall mental health and the well-being of other people. I think that when it comes to criticizing someone for their language in the moment, they can get defensive because it feels like an attack on their character. But I think that if you approach it from the standpoint of this is for the better good, like this is so, you're considerate of other people, I think that can make a difference.
I also think it's it can also be related to a better way to communicate, right? To say, that's fine, it's very you can make it very emotional, but you can articulate your feelings. If you talk to young people about a better way to communicate how they're feeling, a more articulate way, a way that maybe people won't get as distracted by the language as they will if you're really putting a paragraph together or using different words, so that people aren't focused on the emotional words, they're focused on your content, and that I think is really, really important. I think that idea that you're minimizing, you're taking the easy way out, if you will, by using words that will elevate the kind of a temperature in a room. Sometimes there's a reason to do that, right? And there's a space to do it, but oftentimes it's not. And so I just think, in terms of teaching young people, part of it is respect. I feel, as you know, I feel very strongly about that. But I also think part of it is you can say that differently. For us, that was part of what, when we got in trouble about using different words, it was because, if you said what, you got married. Because first of all, now you're not allowed to question your parents, but they were like, put a sentence together. You're not allowed to use slang or short words with me. And it's because they didn't like how we were communicating.
So I'm someone who has what I'll call an eclectic playlist on my phone. I like lots of different kinds of music. And, sometimes you have your workout playlist and, you're looking for a certain beat and then sometimes I'll tune in to some music services and pop up a song and it's just one cuss word after another, just like I lose focus on my workout because it's just that distracting. How do you feel about the proliferation of the profanity in the music that we're hearing in the movies that we're seeing?
For music, some of the rappers, I don't even know what they're saying, so sometimes I don't even hear the words. But I think if it's over and over, it can distract, but I still focus more on the beat. Like I like the workout example.
You get on the beat. Okay. Focus on the beat. You ever heard like the radio version?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the real version,
Yeah.
the unedited version.
Then
You're
it's
like,
shocking.
is that what they say?
Sometimes it
That's
can
funny,
be.
yeah. Well, when I'm working out, if I like the song well enough,
Exactly.
I'll listen to it and I'll be, because I'm in the workout.
Yes.
I'm not thinking about, all the vernacular necessarily. I'm listening to the beat. It's interesting because while I wouldn't say any of that, it doesn't really bother me when I hear it if I'm by myself. Now, kind of going back, I remember we were watching something and we were with the larger family and some of the elders, and somebody said something. I said, "Uh-oh, they're not gonna like that." So I think it's just, again, it goes back to time and place.
Yeah.
If it's just me, it doesn't really bother me.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I don't want to. It's kind of like what you said before. It's like
I think
out of respect for other.
Yeah, I think it
Especially
depends on
elders.
kind of the song too, and I think what Shannon said. I mean, sometimes it's just so repetitive, right? You're just like, okay, well, that's not really adding any value to that song,
Right.
Or like,
right.
but sometimes
No
it's
other
really part.
words.
They're making a statement, right? And so it's part of that speech, and so I think that. But I do think it does, going back to really where Julie was, it does tend to normalize it, and again, and desensitize people to. The fact that there are individuals who are uncomfortable. But the thing with music is, if you don't like it, don't listen to it,
Right.
right?
Something
You
else.
just don't
That's
have to listen to it. And I think that's the benefit of that makes it different for people who really like it and or whom it's not an issue or who like it when they're working out. Fine, go knock yourselves out. And for those who don't, you have that opportunity. It's not, it's not going to be blasting on the music at the Jewel, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
Or at least not the version, the actual version, right? They might blast the actual,
The radio version.
the radio
that's what you
ver-
call
or the
it.
or the
Yeah.
even
The radio
cleansed
version.
or the elevator version,
Right,
which is even
right,
worse or
right.
even
Yeah.
cleaner. So
Yeah, it's and again, by no means I'm not trying to be a prude. I have these things. They're on my playlist. There's just some things that I like. They make a statement. There's a few people I can think of. They make a statement.
Sorry, I mean to interrupt, but
No,
my
you
mom,
please.
I'm thinking of, I was like, what song does she really, really like? And she liked the Big Sean song that is literally the A word, and she didn't know that that's what the word was because she heard the radio version and she's singing it. I'm like, do you know what you're saying?
Right.
Radio
And it's literally over and over and over. Like she said, this, she's like,
Exactly.
agency. Turn it off. What do you think, Julie? What kind of music are you listening to?
Well, I mean, yeah, definitely not the kind that contains so many cuss words, but I would say that along with television, when I reflect back on growing up and where I've encountered words like that, music has been a big one. And I think that even with censored versions, radio versions, that it is a very easy way to, again, normalize it for younger people, because it doesn't take much imagination to think of the word that a song is bleeping out or replacing something with, often poorly edited. It's like the artist doesn't even prioritize the clean version of the song. So of course, as a kid, you're gonna recognize that something's off about it and, fill in the blanks, so.
Julie, I'm gonna need you to run for president one day. On that, we'll be right back. Call me an internal optimist, but I have hope for returning to a more courteous and less charged civilization. Most of us are guilty of stringing together a few choice four-letter words from time to time. Choice is at the heart of this appeal. There's a saying that goes, you train people how to treat you. In this case, insist on striking a more respectful tone and interrupt the cycle of excessively harsh communication styles. That's part of that going high that First Lady Michelle urges. Let's set a better example for our children and each other. There's so much going on in our communities, on our jobs, and in the world that we really need to hear each other. We risk being tuned out if our language is just too hot to handle, and we cannot afford that. The bottom line is to try something different and watch your world unfold for the better. Thank you to my guests, Andrea, Stephen, Shannon, and Julie. Until next time, remember to live, laugh, and love. Thanks for watching.